Hey everyone, welcome to the Torah Matinee Shir. I used to give this shir at Chabad of Monterey, and I did it like I don't know a few times, and people didn't go, so I just kind of stood there and just did it to nobody because I would prepare, um, and so I just could do it. Um, but it didn't mean I quit preparing. I just quit giving the shir. And and it's been a crazy Pesach. You know, if you would have asked me, even a week ago, will yeshivot shut down? I mean, will people not go to their family on Pesach and for a seder? I would have been like, no, like the Jews, we always survive, and this level of the inability to live as a Jew has is unprecedented in our time. I mean, this is like it's not just a once in a lifetime thing. This is some crazy business, and I'm hearing a lot of cool Torah talks about what it all means and what's a person supposed to do in these crazy times. And so I delivered this year yesterday, again to nobody, and I thought, it's just silly. I mean, we live in a world with all these abilities to connect, and people are using them now, and so if I can provide a little bit of chizuk, I'd like to do that. And so what we're going to talk about is the Torah portion that we read on Shabbos Pesach Pandemic, right? It was quite an isolated event for all of Klal Yisrael. I had a couple of really beautiful sidarim, but I was with myself, man. It was crazy, and and so it is. These are wild times, and so it is. So let's see what we can learn from the Torah portion that we read on Shabbos. Um, it had to do with it comes from parsha Kitisa, and it comes after the golden calf. And so Hashem is a little bit upset. Hashem is very upset. He says, "I'm going to wipe these people out," and Moshe prays for them, and he saves the day. And and the prayer that Moshe says is, actually, the prayer that Hashem says, right? I didn't really see that until I read it yesterday. But we'll come to to God's attributes in a minute. But something that I wanted to mention, and this happened in the Torah portion yesterday. That when the Jews left Egypt, the Exodus from Egypt, right? We had the plagues, and Paro finally conceded, and the Jews left. So then, so the people left, and they're out in the desert, and Moshe set up his tent like way outside the camp, or set up a tent, Oil Moed, and when the people had a question, he would go out to his tent, out to the tent, and then a cloud, would descend in front of the tent, and God would be in the cloud, whatever that means, and he would speak to Moses in a voice, whatever that means. And then Moshe would come back with this, divine information, and he'd give it over to the people. So that's pretty good stuff, right? Either you believe it or you don't. But when the golden calf happened, Hashem was upset. Moses was upset, right? He smashes the tablets, and then Hashem says, these people, get out of the way. I'm going to destroy them. And so Moshe, being Moshe, he says, that's not a good idea. He says, he says, these aren't the words he says, but this is what he says is, you have all these gigantic miracles, and you finally get the people out of the land, and then you bring them out of here, and and you give them a Torah, and then you destroy them. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, and yeah. So a crazy thing happens at this point, right? So Moshe, he's talking to God, whatever that means, and he says, God, I know you're mad, but how am I supposed to know you're not mad at me? Show me your glory. So Hashem says to him, again, this is one of these crazy stories, right? I love these stories, and I believe these stories. But so Hashem says to Moses, look, nobody can see me. Nobody can see my face. But I'll tell you what I'll do. There's a little rock over there, and I'll put you on that rock, and I'll walk past you. But I'm gonna put my hand in front of you. I'm gonna put you a little crack there. Put my hand in front of you, and I'm gonna walk. I'm gonna walk, and I'm gonna keep my hand in front of you, so you can't see me. And then when I go by, I'll remove my hand, and you can see my back. I'll let you see that much, right? And what he sees is that Hashem's wearing a talis, right? So it says here, and this is a beautiful thing, and then I'll stop talking about the parsha because there's some other things to talk about. But so then Hashem comes down in the cloud, and he says, the attributes of mercy, right? God. He'll rachum b'chanun, erech yapayim, chesed b'emet. Right? It says God is compassionate, he's gracious, he's slow to anger, abundant in kindness and truth, preserver of kindness for thousands of generations, forgiver of iniquity, willful sin, and error, who cleanses, but doesn't cleanse completely. Yeah, so that's the way that God himself teaches us to pray. And there's no question that in these times that there is a need to pray. Again, I'm a religious person. I'm a spiritual person. And so I don't believe in accidents. I think science can prove certain things, but science doesn't cause things. Coronavirus isn't the first plague. At the mention of the golden calf, there was a plague, right? And what brought that plague? Well, idol worship. Not even so much idol worship. It was just like a misunderstanding. And God's a jealous God. And, so we saw it as, idol worship. And God doesn't like that. But we're in another plague now. And so what is the cause of this plague? And I would have to say again, idol worship. Because who prays to God for salvation? To Today's Easter. The reason why nobody listens to my shirim is because I'm a convert and I was a radical Christian. I'm a radical Jew. And so my opinion offends everyone. And today's Easter. Um, so the streets were emptier than usual. And so I said to one of my friends, "Where is everybody?" And he says, "It's Easter." And I said, "Oh, that explains it. Everybody's logged in, worshiping." I won't talk about Mashiach yet. Um, for a brief moment, there was a thought that there was going to be some sort of cheter that Jews would be able to have their Siddarium by teleconference, like have a Zoom Seder. But nobody's able to give such a cheter. And the people who were authorities actually came and said no. So we weren't able to log in. The laning and all that. I mean, it could probably hear the laning, somehow. But the way we do things is 10 men, and yeah, apparently that's against the law. My shul has a sign on it. So do all of yours. Yeah, crazy times, right? And so I posit that it's because there's a lack of understanding that God runs the world. There's a lack of understanding that God is a jealous God, and he doesn't settle for nonsense. And so there's a plague. Yeah. So there's a prayer that we say like pretty much every day. Well, every day. In fact, multiple times a day. Um, and it says this. It says, "I command you on this day." Right? That's what I'm asking you. Right? I command you um, to love God and to serve Him with all your heart and with all your soul. And then I will send rain to your land in its proper season, the early rain and the late rain, and you will gather in your grain and the wine and the oil, and I will give grass in your field to your cattle, and you'll eat and be satiated. Here comes the good part. Yeah, it says it right here. And we say it every day. "Take heed, lest your heart be seduced, and you turn away and worship gods who are alien, and prostrate yourselves before them. Then the wrath of God will ignite against you." You like that? "He will stop up the heavens, and there will be no rain, and the earth will not give forth its yield, and you shall quickly perish from the good land that God gave you." And there I find the proof for the coronavirus. And my opinion is problematic. And this is why. There's nothing in the world that can change a person's responsibility toward the world. There's no excuse a person can make to get out of their divine purpose. So any sort of dodge simply will not work. And we live in a dodge-filled world. And so it's payday. And I think, well, I want to believe that I'm not the only person who's affected by this worldwide epidemic, and that other people are also affected. And they're beginning to think, hey, wait a minute. Maybe there is a higher power in this world. Maybe I'm not the end all. Maybe I'm selfish and I should care a little bit more about others. And maybe I should acknowledge that there's a God. And I think that this is happening all over the world, that people are beginning to recognize that their efforts are minuscule and that God, or this higher power, whatever you want to call it, this thing that brings plagues, is a power that's greater than anything that an individual can combat on the physical level. But at a spiritual level, there is much that we can do. The first place to begin is for a person to believe that Hashem runs the world and that everything is for good. And even though we may not like what we see, we don't understand the big picture. That's always been the case. And there's so many times that we run against misunderstandings based on our small little intuition. And sometimes it's not even necessary to have an opinion. Sometimes it's enough to just say, wow, I accept it. I don't like it. I don't want it. I accept it. Because God has a plan for my life. That's my solution to the pandemic. And those who die won't do it. And some people will die who are God-fearing. And that's for a different reason. Everybody's time comes when it comes. And God is the only true judge. So we can't have fear. At a time like this, we need to have hope that God is merciful, that He's all the things in the prayer. Kel rachum v'hanun, era kapayim. He's all of these things. Slow to anger, compassionate. I can tell you in my own life, I have many sins. You know, I was a Christian. And so when I converted to Judaism, the religion of my birth condemned me to hell. Then I became Jewish, and because of my sins, now I live in a state of, of karet. It's a Jew thing. I brought it on myself with my sins. So I can't make an excuse. I can't get angry at God. And I guess that's what I want you to feel. A personal responsibility that I made decisions along the way that were harmful. And it's payday. And I hope, I'm a person who tends to despair. But I'm learning to not do that. Because I have trust that there's something more to life. And on Pesach time, It's our responsibility to feel that we were personally brought out of Mitzrayim. And we're not slaves. We're free men. And in these times, what that means is we're free to be brave. We're free to love and to care, to put our own needs aside, to stay in the house because it's good for the world. And while you're in your house, pray. Bring Hashem close. Hashem loves you. Hashem wants only good things. And people are dying all around us. So our task is to find the good in it. And I hope and I pray that Hashem will help us to see the good and only good. And that by turning our hearts toward Him, we will gain the merit to finally have the redemption that we seek. And that may these times that we see be the rumbling of the coming of the Messiah. And when the Messiah arrives, that we all will recognize and know. And may Hashem grant us the merit that our Messiah will come speedily and in our day.